Hey guys, this video is going to be a continuation of my basics on how to read sheet music. I made a previous video that got cut off at the end, so I wasn't able to complete it, but it was getting kind of long anyway. It was like 30 minutes, so I figured I'd do a part 2. When I left off in the last one, I was talking about accidentals, but before I do that, I want to go over the circle of fifths and key signatures and all that. So if you have any familiarity with music theory at any level, I'm sure you've heard of the circle of fifths. Basically what it is a diagram of every single key that there is in music, every key signature, both the sharp keys signatures and the flat key signatures, as you can see, and their relative minors, as I mentioned in my last one. Every major key has a relative minor, every minor has a relative major, and how to find them. So I want to just go over this diagram, and then, as I mentioned before, key signatures, let you know what key the piece you're looking at is in, what scale it's based on, what notes are going to be native to that key, what chords are going to be native to that key, and so on. As I said, every scale is made up of notes, and you can use those notes to make chords and so on and so forth. So as you can see here, at the 12 o'clock position, you have at the top here, I think that's cut off, but there you go. It says major, and then you see a C, and then you see this natural sign. What that means is that C major and its relative minor A minor. So all the minor keys are in the inside of the circle here in green, and all the major keys, both sharp and flat, are on the outside. So C major has no sharps or flats, so that's why the natural symbol is there, and its relative minor is A minor. Also no sharps or flats, and why it's important that these majors are linked up with the relative minor is because they share the same key signature. So when you're looking at a piece and you see a key signature, which as I mentioned is between the clef symbol and the time signature, if there's nothing, no sharps or flats, it's either C major or A minor. But so if you're looking at one of these, you have to know that it can be either the major key or the relative minor that corresponds to that key signature. And in my last video I described and explained how you can determine that, which one it is. Okay, so you start at C major, relative minor is A minor, no sharps or flats. Then moving clockwise on the circle of fifths, you have your sharp key signatures, and as you can probably see, it goes in fifths. C to G is a fifth, G to D is a fifth, D to A is a fifth, etc. So G has one sharp, and E minor has one sharp, same key signature, looks like that right here. Hopefully you can see that, it's one sharp on the F. And as you move along clockwise, you add one more sharp. So that's the key signature for G. Now you move the fifth up, and you have D major and B minor. They have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. That's what that key signature will look like. You move up a fifth, you have A major, F sharp minor. It has three sharps, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp right there. You move up again, you have E major and C sharp minor with four sharps, F, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. You move up a fifth again, and you have B, has five sharps, G sharp minor is relative minor, F sharp, G sharp, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. You move up a fifth from B, you have F sharp here. Relative minor is D sharp minor. Has six sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, B sharp, A sharp, E sharp. So as you can see, the key signatures, they're getting an increase of one sharp each time you move clockwise along the circle of fifths. Then you move up a fifth from F sharp, you have C sharp, and that has seven sharps right here. F, C, G, D, A, E, and B. Its relative minor is B flat minor. Okay, and then you start at C and you go counterclockwise, those are your flat keys. So you start on F, it has one flat, B flat, that's what the key signature looks like. And if you move and going this way, it's moving a fourth instead of a fifth. So now the key with two flats is B flat major, relative G minor, has two flats, E and B. Move up a fourth, E flat has three flats, relative minor is here. E flat, A flat, and B flat. You move up a fourth to A flat, it has four flats, key signature here. Move up a fourth, D flat, or B flat minor. It has five flats, key signature right here. And then you move up a fourth from there, you have G flat with six flats, key signature right here. Move up a fourth from that, you have C flat, also known as B natural, but in this instance, for this key signature, it's called C flat. And seven flats, key signature right here. Okay, so when those are all the key signatures that you will encounter, and yeah, so those are the key signatures you will encounter, and they're based upon the scales. So if you have your scales memorized, which you should, which is very important, as soon as you see these key signatures, that's all you need to know what scale it could be based on, the minor or the major. You'll see this symbol here. Like for example, you'll see this key signature with three sharps. You'll know, okay, that's either A major or F sharp minor. And since you know those scales, you don't have to analyze this any further with regard to actually looking at which notes are sharp or flatted, because you will have the scales memorized, so you won't have to do that. You already know what notes are going to be in that key. So it's just very important to memorize your scales. It makes it easier, it makes it faster, and so you should study this diagram and try to memorize the different key signatures that you'll see. And you can also look at different pieces of sheet music to get more practice with that, to just get more exposure, because the more you see them, the more you'll begin to memorize them. So that's the circle of fifths. That is key signatures. Now I want to talk about accidentals, and with regard to key signatures as well. So I guess I can use this. So if you see this key signature here, A major or F sharp minor, basically what it's telling you is that any of these notes that you encounter in that piece, whether it be the F, the C, or the G, those are going to all be sharp unless otherwise notated by accidentals. So basically it's telling you what scale the piece is based on and built from, and all the notes that can be found within it will make up this key, and if they don't, they will lie outside of that key, but they will be notated with accidentals. So basically when you see an F, a C, or when you see any of these notes that lie within these key signatures, you follow what the key signature is telling you to do. If they're sharp or flatted, you follow that unless otherwise notated. So now I will explain accidentals by using one of Joplin's rags as an example. We'll just use the non-parallel. Okay, so here you can see the key signature here, and it's two flats. So what that's telling you if you go back to your circle of fifths, or if you have it already memorized, it's telling you it's either B flat major or it's B minor. So for this case, we're going to say it's B flat major. So what that's telling you is that any E or B that you see in this piece, you will automatically lower a half step and play an E flat or a B flat. So any one you see. So if you see an E, if you see this B, for example, that's going to be a B flat. If you see an E, it's going to be an E flat. Okay, now when you want to bring in notes that lie outside of the key signature or scale, what you have to do is notate them with what's called accidentals, because if you don't, then by default it goes to what the key signature is telling you. So in this case, if you wanted to play an E natural or a B natural, you would have to notate that with an accidental sign of the natural sign. So as you can see here, there is an E and there is a natural next to it. So that natural cancels out the key signature for this instance, allowing you to play an E natural. Okay? Now, the thing about accidentals is that they're only in effect for the measure that they occur in, and the instance at right when they appear, not before. Okay, so if there was an E before this this natural sign, it would be flatted. It only becomes natural when you see this symbol next to it. Okay, so anything before that would be E flat. Let's say there were E's before this one. They would all be flatted because they have to conform to the key signature. Okay, so now you see there's an E natural. Let's say there was another E next to that one. That would also be natural, because any E following this natural sign is going to be natural unless otherwise notated. Again, if you wanted to go back to flat, you have to put the flat symbol in there. Okay, I think I mentioned that before. The pound sign is the sharp symbol, the B is the flat, and this is the natural. I believe an X is double sharp, and two B's would be double flat. Okay, so as you go along this measure, now you encounter another E, but you see a flat next to it. That's because they want you to revert back to what the key signature is telling you to do, and they want you to play a B flat. So they have to put that flat there because it needs to now cancel out the natural that was introduced before. So if this flat wasn't here and this natural was there, this E would also be natural because it was not put back to the way it was with another accidental. So basically, when a measure ends, everything goes back to normal in the next measure. And if you want to alter the key signature again and bring in notes that lie outside of that key, then you have to do the whole process again. So what you need to take away from that is that accidentals are only in effect for the measure that they occur in, and all of the notes preceding one will conform to the accidental that is next to the first note. Anything before that is going to go along with the key signature, and anything after that is going to be the same as the one it's next to, unless notated otherwise. Again, you can see this example here. There's a natural, and then within the same measure they want you to go back to playing the flat, so they have to notate that again. Okay? In the next measure here, you see an F sharp, and normally in the key of B flat major, F is natural, but here they want you to play an F sharp, so they put the sharp sign there to let you know that you're going to deviate from the key signature for this instance. And then you go along the measure, you see, okay, now they want you to go back to playing an F natural, so they have to notate that with the natural sign. And then here we have the end of the measure, and it goes back. Okay, so keep that in mind about accidentals. That's how they function, that's what they serve to do, and those are the rules that they follow, and you have to keep that in mind. So when you see key signature, follow it unless otherwise notated by accidentals. Okay, now what else I wanted to talk about was some other things that you might encounter in sheet music. Right here, you see it says slow march tempo. That's telling you, if you're familiar with ragtime, you would be familiar with how that, which BPM that translates to. But if you're not, you would have to do some further research. And sometimes these tempo markings, they will change throughout the piece. So just because it starts in one tempo doesn't mean it won't deviate, but it usually will tell you, the composer will usually mark in how they want you to change. And sometimes you might see something like more specific with the specific metronome setting, like quarter note equals 72. That's also a tempo indication, and you would set your metronome to that to be more specific. Some other things you might encounter are dynamics like this, MF, telling you how loudly or softly to play the piece, moderately loud. And you can look all those up, the different, dynamic indications that there are in music. You might see an F, you might see a P for loud and soft. Okay. Now, I talked about the measures, how these measures are separated by these vertical thin lines. At the end of a theme or a section, for example, like right here, the end of this intro, you'll see a double thin line that indicates the end of a section or a theme. You might also see this bold double line with 4 dots, 2 in the treble and 2 in the bass. That's a repeat, so that means you're going to play this. That means that this section is going to have a repeat. So you're going to play all the way until you get to the first ending. Endings are here marked with the 1 dot, that's the first ending, then the bracket with the 2 dot, that's the second ending. And you can see that the second ending also ends this section because there's a thin double line. And then at the end of the first section, you see a repeat sign again, the bold double line with the 4 dots, which corresponds to the repeat that's at the beginning. So what this is telling you to do is that this section is going to have a repeat. So you play along here, starting at the first measure with the repeat symbol, and you're going to go along all these measures till you get to here, and then this is the first ending and it has a repeat, so you're going to go back to the measure where the corresponding repeat symbol is, and you're going to play from there all again till you get to the measure before the first ending. Then you're not going to play the first ending again, you're going to skip it and you're going to play the second ending, and that's going to end the section. So you start out playing, you get to ending 1, go back to the beginning, play again, skip ending 1, play ending 2. Okay, so that's how the repeats work, and you'll see those a lot in ragtime and other styles as well. Another thing you might come across, and if you notice, the time signature is only at the beginning, the very first measure of the piece, and otherwise it's implied throughout the rest of the piece unless you see another one. Okay, and sometimes the key signature will change, so you really have to pay attention to that as well, because it'll modulate to a different key, and then if you stick to the original one, you're not really paying attention, you'll be playing in the wrong key and it won't sound right. Okay, another thing, this piece has a lot of things you'll encounter, so it's good that I picked it. You see here, these less than looking signs are greater than. Those are accents. That means to bring those out more, emphasize them. Here you see this long looking one in the between the two clefs. When it's going this way, when it starts out skinny and opens up, it means gradually increase your volume. It's called a crescendo. If it was the opposite way, it would be gradually decrease the volume. That would be a decrescendo, like right here, this one. Here you see rests. If you see these little notes here that are smaller than the other note next to, with a line through it, those are grace notes. That means those notes are ever so slightly implied, and they're fast. They're very fast. So it'd be like, you know, you would imply that note, and you would land on this note here, and this note would be given emphasis over this note. So you just, you quickly glance from this note to that note. Okay, I went over dotted rhythms. What else? And dotted rhythms here, those add half the value to the note. Not to be confused with if you see a dot under the note, that means play it staccato. Anything else? I went over slurs and how they're different than ties. You might see measures like this one, where it seems that there are multiple voices within one measure. So you see a half note, which would take up the whole measure in 2/4 time, because a quarter note is 1 beat, so a half note would be 2 beats, and there are only 2 beats in a bar. So this would take up the whole measure. So you might say, well, how can you have this and this? Well, basically what they want you to do there is hold this note for the whole measure while you're playing these notes above it. So you would hold this A. This would be one chord, and when you're playing this chord, you would only hold this note. This note is to be held for the whole measure. Then you're to let go of those two, and you're going to play the rest of the measure. Okay? So that's just to indicate, you know, multiple voices going on in one measure. That's how you would notate it. So don't get confused by that. And see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Repeats and sections. I did accidentals. I did the circle of fifths and the keys and all that. Let me see if I see anything else here. 22 minutes already. I'm not sure if I went over this in my other video, but how you know when to play, you know, the hands together or separate or whatever. When the notes line up exactly, perfectly, that means that you're playing hands together. And then anything that is not lined up means it's played separately. So for example here, you'd play these two together, then you'd play right, then you'd play it together, then you'd play right, and so on and so forth. So that's how you know that. Another thing I'm not sure if I went over, but I'll go over it quickly here. How do you know where you are in terms of, you know, location on the piano, because there are so many octaves laid out? That goes according to, you know, where the notes occur within the staff. Middle C can always be your reference point. So if you're like, okay, I know that's an F, but which F is it? If you base it off middle C, you can see, well, this would be the F above middle C, and this would be the F an octave above that. And anything below middle C is usually in the bass clef, so that's how you know that. And as you look over sheet music more and more, you'll get more accustomed to just knowing where you are, and you won't have to, you know, actively try to figure it out as much. As you practice, you'll get better and better at it. So in the beginning, just use middle C as your reference point, and you'll know where you are in terms of, you know, the register of the piano, if you're up in the treble, if you're down in the bass. Okay. Dynamics, external, key signatures. Like for example here, you could see the piece started off with 2 flats, but now it's modulated to a different key that has 3 flats, so you have to be aware of that. Anything else? You might see this right here, this fermata symbol right there. this half moon with a dot. If I remember correctly, and you see here it says fine, that means the piece is over. Here you see your second ending with the double thing here. Okay, yeah, the bold double line without the dots means the piece is over. Bold double line with dots means it's a repeat right there. Okay, that's called a fermata, that symbol. What else? You might see something like this. Here we are in a different rag, rose leaf rag. You might see this squiggly line, and next to this chord that is accented with that little symbol up there. If I remember correctly, that means to roll that chord, like arpeggiate it, but roll it quickly. And a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on this. I'm self-taught with both playing and reading this music, and my reading level is very preliminary. I can usually get through simple scores, but it takes me a very long time to read them. So I'm not an expert. If that is incorrect, I apologize. Anything else? Let's see. Yeah, you'll see different Italian terms sometimes telling you, how to play, which tempo to play and all that, so you have to look those up and what they mean. I think that's gonna wrap it up for this video. So I think if you watch those two videos, you'll have a solid foundation for the basics of reading sheet music. So if you practice everything that I go over in the videos and you practice it quite a bit, you should be pretty good. Important things: keep an eye on your key signatures, your time signatures, know all your scales, know how to count the rhythms out, know how to play according to accidentals and all that. And as always, if you need clarification on anything or anything is confusing, feel free to comment below and I'll get back to it, help you out. If you check out my other videos, I have tutorials, like ragtime tutorials. I have some pop stuff, so you can check those out. And then if you can like, share, subscribe, and all that, I appreciate that, and thanks for watching.